This 17 News at Noon podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Noon podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Well, good day. I'm Elena Rusk. It was a violent weekend across Bakersfield with 3 shootings that killed 4 people. One of those incidents, an officer-involved shooting in South Bakersfield Saturday night. The BPD says they got calls about a man possibly carrying a knife and acting erratically in the parking lot of a business on White Lane near South 8th Street about 10:30. When officers tried approaching that man, they say he ran away. The BPD says another officer found the man about half a mile away, and that's when the shooting happened. That man died at the scene. No officers were hurt. Police say they found a screwdriver at the scene. And 3 people behind bars today for allegedly killing a man in central Bakersfield this weekend. This shooting happening on Q and 34th Streets just before 1 a.m. Saturday morning. That victim, who has not yet been identified, died at the scene. Bakersfield police arrested 45-year-old Ira Kindle and 34-year-old Keith Hamilton on charges of first-degree murder. Police also arresting a third suspect, 30-year-old Terrell Shepard, on several firearm charges. All 3 being held without bail, and they are due in court tomorrow. Meantime, the Kern County Sheriff's Office investigating a double homicide in East Bakersfield. This one happening about 5 o'clock Saturday night on Normandy Drive and Sterling Road. Deputies say they found a man and a woman who appeared to have been violently assaulted. Those victims have not been identified. And let's now turn to your 17 Court Watch. A judge has set a trial date for the 2 men charged in the shooting death of Benny Alcala Jr., a California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation counselor, as he was charging his vehicle in southwest Bakersfield on August 24th. 29-year-old Robert Purnell Roberts charged in early September as 23-year-old Sebastian Parra testified Roberts had targeted Alcala, believing the counselor had money because he was charging an electric vehicle near the target on Stockdale Highway. Parra said he had nothing to do with the killing and had only met Roberts that night, but a grand jury indicted him in December. Both men being held without bail. Today, the judge set their trial to begin on April 19th. We will continue following this case closely, and you can read much more on our website, kget.com. As we continue our storm recovery following the devastating flooding on March 10th, many evacuation orders that were issued that day lasted for more than a week, but some have now been lifted. The evacuation order for East McFarland lifted Thursday afternoon. However, the area of South Taylor Avenue and all of that there remaining under evacuation warnings, which means people need to be ready to leave if necessary. Evacuation orders for Pond and Wolford Heights still in effect. You can find a complete list of the orders and the warnings at readykern.com. Well, in business news, today Amazon announced it will be slashing 9,000 more workers from the company's payroll. In a memo to staff, CEO Andy Jassy cited the, quote, uncertainty that exists in the near future and said the cuts are part of the company's decision to streamline costs. Most of the cuts impacting Amazon's cloud computing, human resources, advertising, and Twitch live streaming businesses. This is the second round of job cuts for Amazon in less than a year. In November, the company began to lay off more than 18,000 workers. Amazon went through a massive hiring phase during the pandemic, adding nearly 800,000 jobs and doubling the size of its workforce from 2019 to 2021. And the Walt Disney Company is reportedly planning massive cost-cutting measures, including considering layoffs. Reports say managers have been told to propose budget cuts and identify candidates to let go, with at least 4,000 positions on the chopping block. The layoffs expected to take place sometime next month. The company reportedly wants to save billions by restructuring and cutting content from Disney+, ESPN, and Hulu. But in lighter news, Blockbuster may have shuttered all of its stores except for that one in Oregon, but the company's website seems to have come alive. If you visit on a mobile browser, a message in Blockbuster's iconic blue background with that yellow lettering says, "Please be kind while we rewind." On desktop browsers, the message reads, "We are working on rewinding your movie." The messages give no indication about what's to come, but some have speculated Blockbuster may be planning a future project. Now owned by Dish Network, the company's website has remained largely unchanged for the past decade.
Hello, this is Tim Callahan with Clinica Sierra Vista, and we're excited to unveil the Community Health Center of the Future, our comprehensive care center. It's located right across the street from Memorial Hospital. We have every service under one roof, from family medicine, OB/GYN care, dental services for adults and children, behavioral health, and much more. So find your way to better care at Clinica Sierra Vista this year at our comprehensive care center. Visit our website, clinicasierravista.org, for the latest on this project. We'll see you soon.
All right, in other headlines around the world, the search for survivors continues after a major earthquake killed at least 15 people in southern Ecuador and northern Peru on Saturday. Hundreds more have been hurt, and rescue teams are combing through the rubble for any people who may be trapped. The 6.8 magnitude earthquake damaged homes and buildings, sending panicked people out into the streets in a region that anchors more than 3 million people. One person died in Peru, 14 others died in Ecuador. And now to the story of Russia invading Ukraine. Chinese leader Xi Jinping is now in Moscow to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin, signaling Beijing's growing embrace of its rising power on the global stage and the potential for it to further deepen conflict with the U.S. and its allies. Xi's visit to Russia could serve as an even greater show of solidarity after the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for the Russian leader on Friday, accusing him of being responsible for war crimes in Ukraine. NBC's Matt Bradley has the latest from Kyiv.
Well, so far the reaction here in Kyiv to this really momentous visit by Chinese leader Xi Jinping to Moscow has been rather muted. We've heard very little. We asked for comments from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they said they wouldn't be commenting until after the visit and probably until after a proposed but not confirmed phone call between Xi Jinping and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky following this visit that's supposed to come this week. But again, that hasn't been confirmed. It seems as though Kyiv, like diplomats throughout the world and leaders throughout the West, are kind of in a wait-and-see mode, trying to see what comes out of this really momentous meeting, whether or not there's another offer for a peace plan, as we saw last month when Chinese leader Xi Jinping offered some sort of peace plan that was rejected by Kyiv and the West as being too favorable to Moscow, or whether or not Xi will offer weapons to Moscow. That would be a paradigm shift in this war, because we've seen Vladimir Putin has been going around the world to his few remaining allies, trying to find those who would be willing to give him weapons to beef up his military that has been so degraded in this now more than year-long war here in Ukraine. It seems as though Xi Jinping wants to try to project themselves, China, as some sort of honest broker between both sides. Now, whether or not that leads to some sort of rapprochement between Ukraine and Russia, well, that's yet to be seen. Right now, it looks like folks here in Kyiv are hoping that there is some daylight between Moscow and Beijing, the kind of daylight that they can exploit and cleave some sort of opening for Ukraine in this very tight relationship between these two men. Matt Bradley, NBC News, Kyiv, Ukraine.
Well, today marks the 20th anniversary of Operation Iraqi Freedom. In March 2003, U.S. forces invaded Iraq, vowing to destroy Iraqi weapons of mass destruction and topple Saddam Hussein's dictatorship. Former President George W. Bush and his administration wagered to the American public and the international community that Hussein was hiding weapons of mass destruction. The coalition never found any weapons, but forces did succeed in knocking him out of power. By the U.S.'s withdrawal from Iraq in 2011, the cost of the war stood high, with at least 4,400 American deaths and more than 32,000 wounded. At least 100,000 Iraqi civilians died. NBC's Richard Engel was there 20 years ago when the U.S. and allies invaded with a campaign of shock and awe. Tonight on NBC Nightly News, he takes you back to a country where much is different. Well, an update to share with you for one of our colleagues. Former KGAT meteorologist Alyssa Carlson recovering this morning after a health scare on air at her news station KCAL over the weekend. Alyssa was about to give the morning forecast on Saturday when the anchors tossed to her. She lost consciousness and fell out of her chair. She was taken to the hospital and then released later that same morning. Alyssa was a part of our Circle 17 family for 14 years. In 2014, she had a different on-air health scare here at KGET, and she discovered she had a leaky heart valve. In 2018, she was crowned Mrs. California and made heart health her platform. Alyssa posted on Instagram over the weekend that this time it was not her heart. She said she's going to be okay, and she thanks everyone for their prayers for her recovery. Let's take a look ahead at some events happening around town this week. Starting today, of course, it's the first day of spring. On Tuesday, the Bakersfield College Renegade Pantry is holding a farmer's market at 10 a.m. on the main campus. On Wednesday, our annual food drive for the Golden Empire Gleaners will be happening at Compassion Corner outside of our studios from 5 a.m. to 6:30. This Thursday, city officials will give us an update for the annual State of Downtown Breakfast. Friday, the Volunteer Center hosting their 9th annual Monopoly Mania event at Hodell's. Saturday, Touch a Truck, an interactive hands-on learning experience for families, returns with dozens of county and community vehicles at Beale Memorial Library parking lot. That's from 10 a.m. to 1 Saturday. And then on Sunday, hundreds of runners hitting the streets of Bakersfield starting at 7 a.m. for the annual Bakersfield Marathon. And I believe they're past that 1,000 runner count now as well. Very exciting.
The 17 News at Noon podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.